you guys act like you've never heard people say this before. It's just because I'm gonna step. I'm actually gonna say what everyone else is thinking, because it's the truth.
Welcome, well met, and well done. You've made your way here. This is Bespoke Musings, a channel where I muse on topics expertly crafted, specially curated, and tailor-made just for you. You know, the Pokemon world is an interesting one. On the one hand, it's a world replete with vibrant locales, intricate, if a bit lopsided Pokemon distribution, and a solid mythos for the regions we visit. On the other, it's a world that either keeps players on a fairly linear path, or in Scarlet and Violet's case, opens the world up with little to do in it save the main story path. It often disregards the characters in the game eventually, both important and not, except for the main villain and maybe the rival, and the history of the world almost always only ties into that of the legendary Pokemon. Taken all together, it makes for a series with uneven world building, and more so, an uninteresting, banal world once you peek behind the curtain. In many ways, I would say that Game Freak is great at macro world building, the creation of a region. Its layout, aesthetics, mythos, and Pokemon distribution, but not so much at micro world building, right? The politics, economy, and detailed history of the region, or the interaction between Pokemon and characters in an area and its settlements. This isn't to say that Game Freak is absolutely terrible at micro world building. Indeed, there are great instances of this, such as the Gen 5 games, which are phenomenal in this regard, par for the course for the best gen. Just saying. Don't fight me in the comments. And even Scarlet and Violet are great when it comes to developing both the main cast and the prominent NPCs. Still, it's something I find wanting in the series overall, and I'd love to see future games delve deep into the livelihoods of the townsfolk and gym leaders, and to see Pokemon interact with humans, each other, and the world in more ways than just mere vessels for battling. I want the Pokemon world to feel lived in, you know? Not one where everything twists and contorts itself solely in service of the actors for the main plot. So, how do we achieve this? Simple. Give us robust side quests. Not the dingy ones from Pokemon Legends Arceus, something better. Game Freak can give us the whole journaling feature we see from PLA and in modern RPGs. You know, the summary of the quest, updates to where we are in each quest, recommended levels, rewards, all that jazz. Ideally, they'd serve as a way to flesh out more elements of the region that don't tie into just the legendary Pokemon or the Generations gimmick. Cause you know, as I said earlier, Game Freak loves that type of world building, even though there should be more to each region than just those aspects. It'd also be a great way to give some personality to the towns by having NPCs interact with players more meaningfully, and could also tutorialize gameplay elements instead of having them intrude in the main story. Now, before we delve deep into the broad types of quests I'd love to see in a future generation, let's talk about the structure of quests. To begin, I'd say that the emphasis of side quests should be the story and characters first and foremost, both human and Pokemon, with any and all gameplay mechanics coming in afterwards. 100%, story and characters should be the core focus of the side quests. It's what helps them avoid being the typical quest we see in most games. And when I talk about stories, I want to see a wide array of genres and tones to round out the region we're in and show its many sides. From funny to suspenseful, heartwarming to spooky, I want as many different tones as possible to be included. Furthermore, I feel as though every quest should be part of a quest chain. This doesn't mean that I don't want standalone quests, far from it. As we know, quest chains are a string of individual quests that form a cohesive narrative whole, and they can be expressed in two ways: sequential quests and referential quests. Sequential quests are what most quest chains entail, and they speak for themselves. You complete quest A to unlock quest B to unlock quest C, and so forth and so on. A sequential quest chain made up of 3 quests is standard, but anywhere from 2 to 5 quests can work, depending on the needs of the quest's narrative. Meanwhile, referential quests are standalone and don't have to be completed seriatim. Rather, information gleaned from one quest will be referenced in other quests to round out the player's knowledge of the particulars in all related quests. So let's say you complete quest 12, and you stumble across a character, Pokemon, item, location, what have you, that seems pretty nondescript, all things considered. You then play through quest 41, and that particular object is referenced in this quest, but now, what seemed unimportant back then has taken on a whole new meaning. And if you complete quest 41 before 12, all the information obtained from the former quest now colors how you feel about the latter. By having this strong focus on story and characters, having a wide variety of tones, as well as linking side quests together via quest chains, It strengthens the atmosphere of a region, and it becomes more palpable, helping it have more of a lived-in feeling. Okay, we've discussed the structure of quests I'd like to see in future Pokemon entries. Now, let's talk about the types of quests I'd like to encounter in these games. Exploration quests are what I've consolidated a handful of common quest types into: fetch quests, delivery quests, and tracking quests. Fetch and delivery quests are essentially the same thing. Start quests at point A, go to point B, and either go back to point A to complete the quest or finish it at point B. Simple, right? Right. Tracking quests function similarly, except you have to visit a handful more points before finishing the quest, and usually, there's a puzzle element where players follow hints or decode clues to proceed further. In any case, gameplay isn't the main highlight of these quests, right? You're essentially running from point to point. Rather, the story elements and exploration are what makes them engaging. Now, I've already gone over the importance of story and characters in the interest of this video, but of all quest types, exploration quests absolutely, positively, unequivocally need to lock in and make these features some of the best and most memorable we've seen in the Pokemon series. Other quest types have a stronger focus on mechanics that can compensate for a weak narrative, but exploration quests will fail if there's nothing to excite, entice, fascinate, or intrigue players. Of course, let's keep in mind that even though exploration quests aren't the most mechanically deep, doesn't mean that they are, or should be, completely devoid of any gameplay depth. No, I call them exploration quests for a reason. Make these quests send players out into locations they'd never stumble across in the main story path, or allow access to a hidden area in a location they've already been to. These quests should strive to give players somewhere new to explore. A new area, dungeons ranging from mini to massive, quest-exclusive buildings in towns and cities where you mingle with NPCs in unique ways, and these places should have an emphasis on environmental world building to give depth to the region, characters, and Pokemon involved in it without feeding the whole plot directly to the player and removing all nuance and subtlety. Let them work for some of the world building, like in the Souls games. Moving on from exploration, let's talk about battle quests. Battle quests will, of course, have the greatest focus on the fights in the Pokemon series, and since they're optional, Game Freak should go all out with a challenge in these battles. I'm talking about a team of at least 3 or more Pokemon, depending on the quest's difficulty, max IVs, EV trained, 4 moves, and a sensible ability. Give us fights with permanent weather and terrain effects that benefit the opponents, and more situations like the clarified from the Isle of Armor DLC, where field hazards have been preemptively set on the field, forcing players to navigate around them. Not only would these quests be good for the challenge, but they could serve as a tutorial for high-level play. Now, like with exploration quests, battle quests can be separated into 2 broad types: trainer battles and Pokemon battles. With trainer battles, in addition to the aforementioned boosted challenge, I like to see all Pokemon in a trainer's team have held items, and for trainers to use medicine and battle items when necessary. A bit of Pokemon switching should also be utilized for the highest level fights in the game. Trainer battles should come in single battles, double battles, as well as in triple and rotation battles. We're on the Switch 2 now, okay? It can handle that many Pokemon effects on the screen. Well, maybe. Now, when talking about the stories for trainer battles, I'd like Game Freak to take a cue from the R's Pokemon contest and give us a quest rival like Lesia was to the player in that content. Give them a compelling story and a personality unlike that of the main rival, and they could even take their chosen starter to make them a trio alongside the player and the main rival. I also think battle quests could be used to flesh out admins of the evil team and Elite Four members, as they're usually underutilized and underdeveloped throughout the series, or they could even be unique teams that are quest exclusive, like the Frontier Brains, or Battle Shadow Lanes from the battle facilities throughout the franchise. With Pokemon Battle Quests, the challenge of trainer battle should remain, but be presented in different ways. For one, the boss Pokemon we've been seeing in the latter entries of the series, like Titan Pokemon or Blood Moon or Saluna, should be present, with increased health and preemptive stat boost once battle begins. I'd also like to see players put in unfair situations, like giving us Totem Pokemon-esque battles, where it's 1v2 with permanent respawning adds. Horde encounters would be great too, just with more variety in the Pokemon lineup, and with levels slightly less than the recommended level for the quest, instead of a full half like in previous entries. Finally, there should be Pokemon Battle Quests that have us solo raid Pokemon using the Generations gimmick. So instead of us being in a team of 4 versus a Dynamax or Terrestrialized Pokemon, it's 1v1. A neat thing you can see happening in these fights is getting aid from an NPC involved in the quest. So if we're to fight a terrestrialized Pokemon, for example, the NPC that issued the quest could show up in the nick of time and help us in a multi-battle. This would, ideally, not be the norm, and only occur if it makes sense for the story. As I've said, Battle Quest should emphasize challenge above all else. After Battle Quest, the last big quest type we'd have are catching and breeding quests. In essence, these quests are fetch and delivery quests, but the mechanics revolving around catching and breeding make them more distinct and allow for more types of objectives to be implemented. With these quests, the goal is to procure the target Pokemon either by catching them on the field, in battle, or by breeding them, then delivering the requested Pokemon to the quest giver. Early quests will have players turn in the requested Pokemon with no special traits, but as the game goes on, the type of Pokemon you have to deliver will need to have certain factors to be eligible to turn in, such as being at a specific level, being of a particular form, being a regional variant, caught from a specific location, caught in a specific Pokeball, being a Totem or Alpha Pokemon, being a specific size, and other such qualifications. For breeding quests, some requirements could be having to breed Pokemon with a certain nature, a specific egg move, a rare gender if it applies, and if Game Freak is feeling particularly sadistic, IVs. Like with Battle Quest, catching and breeding quests, especially the latter, can serve as ways to tutorialize the mechanics for new players, and story-wise, they can be used to expound on the region's Pokemon distribution with Ranger, Breeder, or Scientist quest givers, and are probably the best quest type to show the relationship between a Pokemon and the quest giver. Now that we've gone over the main types of quests I'd like to see implemented in future Pokemon games, let's talk about other quest types we could see. For one, minigame quests. If we ever get a minigame as robust as the Pokeathlon, the Bug Catching Contest, Pokestar Studios, Mantine Surf, or Pokemon Contest, not the awful super contest shows from BDSP, the good ones from previous entries. Ooh, small tangent, but anyone else feels like Game Freak dropped the ball when it came to Pokemon contests? Me? Just me? Okay. Well, in my opinion, hands down the best minigame Game Freak has implemented in a Pokemon game, bar none, and I'm upset at the removal from latter gens. My thoughts on Pokemon contests are myriad, and they will be the topic in a future video, so subscribe and keep an eye out for that. Anyways, as I was saying, if we ever get a robust minigame again, quests could add some depth to both the gameplay and characters as for the standard quests. Keep in mind, I don't consider the actual minigame and the story surrounding it as a side quest. We're talking about proper side quests to the minigame, so using the RS Pokemon contest as an example, you get the entire contest as is, with additional side quests, such as a contest fan asking you to win a cute contest with his partner's wallet, or a lady trainer asking you to beat a beauty contest with elite ice-type moves, things of that nature. Moving on, I'd also love a Pokemon game where we get a major side quest to pitch in and help rebuild a town or city. Like, imagine if a town got ravaged by a rampaging Pokemon, and we're tasked with helping rebuild by gathering materials and supplies, going around the world to bring back Pokemon and people, like important NPCs, to ex-evil team members and such. I love the Suikoden series, Ni no Kuni 2, or Dark Cloud 2. That's my ish, okay? I love me a good city building side quest in a video game. Not only would it be fun to rebuild the town back up in the layout, architectural style, or deck a stand over here, and facilities we like, but it would also be another avenue for us to learn more about the characters we bring back to the city. Finally, the last type of quests I'd like to see are world quests. I copied the term from Atelier Ryzer 3, in which there are quest chains in each of the game's major regions that let players learn more about the place, the political landscape, the goods a region produces, the history of the people of that land, throughout the quest lines. Another example of world quest would be the affinity system between NPCs in a region in the Xenoblade series, where the quests players undertake and how they complete them will change the relationships between the NPCs of a region, as well as increase the party's reputation among the citizenry. Using these examples, I'd like to see each area of a region in future Pokemon games have a world quest spanning several quest chains, highlighting a particular aspects of the area and its issues. For example, let's say that the South Province of Scarlet and Violet has a world quest involving, I don't know, helping Cortando's love crops grow, and establishing a trade route between all the South Province's towns. As we do these quests, we learn more about each town's trading configuration, and in the process, learn more about Katie, Tulip, Clavel, Wait a minute, who's the leader of Mesagoza? Surely it's not the principal of the academy. Surely not. I know Jita is the chairwoman of the academy, but she definitely isn't the leader either, right? See what I mean by the world building? Anyways, you learn more about the leaders of each of the South Province's towns and how the Pokemon help them and the townsfolk in their daily lives. At the end of the world quest, you establish a better trade route throughout the South Province, which could be marked by a visual change in the pertinent settlements. And as a reward for going back and forth through the area many times in your quests, you revitalize the area, diversifying the Pokemon distribution and available items in the area's shops and boutiques. So, to bring it all together, the Pokemon series tends to have decent enough world building, but if Game Freak wants to take it to the next level and increase player immersion and interest, an effective way to do so is to implement well-crafted, well-written side quests that flesh out the world. Exploration quests should nudge players on the beaten paths of the region and give them characters and stories that they'll be endeared to. Battle quests should challenge players at every level in unique, exciting ways, and catching and breeding quests should be used to establish the core elements of these mechanics and layer them with more and more complexity and intricacies as the quest ranks increase. And that's that on how I'd use quests to strengthen the micro world building in the Pokemon games. As the more astute viewers have picked up, this isn't really a video on Pokemon, it's a video on side quests, using the Pokemon series as a backdrop. So many of the suggestions I've given here can be implemented in other games to help and refine side quest design. While I spent this video talking about 3 major quest types and a few miscellaneous sub-quest types, there were several other elements surrounding quests I chose to eschew for brevity's sake, such as hybrid quests, meaningful choices and divergent paths in quests, which, let's be real, we're talking about Game Freak, let's start small first, let's start small, diurnal and nocturnal quests, seasonal quests when we get them back, fishing quests, things like that. In any case, for my next video, I'll have thoughts on another classic Nintendo franchise regarding what I'd like to see in a future entry. So next time, bye! Thanks for making it to the end of this video. Please, take time to like and subscribe. I'm so appreciative of everyone who even clicked on this video to check out what I have going on here. Thank you all so much.